No mai hoki mai ki tēnei wharikarakia ki tēnei whānau. Welcome along this morning. It's great to have you here, and those that are visiting, really want to welcome you this morning. And Andrea and I were away last weekend. We were up in Mount Maunganui for Papamoa actually, for a little holiday. We went to church in Mount Maunganui to Curate Church and had a great time there. But it's always great to be home. You know, I look around this place and I see a whole lot of familiar, awesomely looking, handsome and beautiful faces that you just don't see anywhere else in the nation. It's true. You're here and we're here. So it's awesome to be sharing the word, and we're doing part 2 of a series. Who enjoyed last Sunday? Absolutely awesome. I know said I was away, but we saw it on our website. Isn't technology fantastic? Being able to keep up with the play and catch up with what's happening, and our series in We Make a Difference. Pastor Sarah shared part 1 last week, and what a brilliant message it was as she spoke about making room for people. You make a massive difference when you make room for others, because how many know it's so easy to walk through life, it's just in your own little bubble, isn't that right? And we just we're just doing our next thing. Everybody get out of my way, because I'm busy. Isn't that kind of like the bane of our modern era? Busyness. And so Sarah talked last week about creating margin in your life to make room for others and to be caring and sharing and that sort of thing. And I want to build on this, on her message last week, and bringing part 2 of this message, of this series. I want to speak this morning about being salt. Being salt. Now, we name our church Salt. What does it really mean? What is in that name? I mean, who ever heard of a church called Salt anyway? It's a crazy name if you don't have any context for it. In fact, I have heard of one other church called Salt. There may be more, but there's one in Australia, I think in Melbourne, called Salt. But that's the only other church I've heard. What is this deal? Why are we called Salt? People often ask me when I tell them the name of our church, they say, what does SALT mean? And they think it might be an acronym for something. You know, an acronym, SALT, maybe something. I strained my brain to think of what might be an acronym for SALT. I thought of Speakers of Ancient Light and Truth. That doesn't sound very kind of like, you know, but hey, no, it's not an acronym. It's got nothing to do with that. It's simply a reminder of what Jesus said that he wants us to be. I want us to have a look at this together in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 13 to 16, and we're reading from the Message. Follow through with me, or if you'd like to bring it up on your device or whatever, but otherwise just listen to these words. Matthew 5 verse 13 to 16. And this is Jesus speaking. Let me tell you why you are here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and will end up in the garbage. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up to God, this generous Father in heaven. Can I tell you, church, that you as a believer in Jesus are a vital part of the connection between other people and God. You're here to rep God. We're here to rep Jesus, and it's by encountering us when we're salty, and I'll draw on what that means a bit more in a moment, but when we've got saltiness in our lives, people encounter God. How many know that God can make the biggest difference on this world out of anybody? But he's chosen to connect with people through you and I. We're his reps. We rep God. Now, just like salt enhances the flavor of food, you and I can enhance the flavor of people's lives by causing them to taste godliness. But just exactly how do we do this? I mentioned before that Andrea and I were on a little holiday last week, and last Sunday evening we were travelling back and we stopped in at Turangi to fuel up and other things that you do when you stop at service stations, and which we won't elaborate on. And anyway, so we stopped and I got out of the ute, and I was treated to the very, very rare experience these days of a forecourt attendant coming and offering to fill my fuel tank. How many people have had that experience lately? It doesn't happen much, does it? Every now and then. Well, Turangi Z, I can encourage you to stop in there. There's a great guy there. And anyway, he came over and said, "Hey, can I fill up your tank?" I said, "That'd be great, thanks." So I jumped out of the ute and went round the back and chatted with him. In the meantime, he yells out to this guy that's biking past, just a random guy biking through the service station. He yells out to him, "Hey bro, come over here." And anyway, this guy wheels around on his bike and comes over, and this gas attendant, he's whipping out some cards out of his pocket, and he had a special little deal on the card where you got 10 cents off a litre and other benefits, and he's giving them to this guy and he's giving them to me, and he drew us both into a conversation. Next thing you know, we're standing around, you'd think we'd been buddies from way back, and we're just chatting away and having a good old yarn about life. And I just thought to myself, this guy is incredible. How amazing is that? Very soon, as I went in to pay for my diesel, I learned that this particular guy had won 2018 Forecourt Attendant of the Year for all the Z stations in the country. It was pretty clear why. This is just how he was. He brought flavour to my day. In fact, I thought to myself, if I was having a blue moment before that encounter, I certainly was not having a blue moment after. He did something to lift the atmosphere that was around me, potentially. That guy put a great flavour in my mouth for Z service stations, especially the Turangi one. Now, I share that story because it's a great illustration of what we are called to do, except to bring the flavour of heaven into people's lives, to put a good flavour in people's lives concerning Jesus and his church. Can I say it's Jesus and his church? See, sometimes people go, "Oh, no, it's all about God." No, Jesus and his church. We are his body on earth. We're his hands and his feet. He is connected to us. And, I talk to people around the place, and there's actually a good lot of flavouring needing to be done out there concerning the church, because there's a lot of bad flavours in people's mouths about church. There's been a lot of unsalty Christians in the world that people have encountered. And it's time that changed. It's time that we went out there with a new rep record. See, Psalm 34 verse 8 says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good." Did you know that God is actually good? Did you know that God is tasty? Now, something about salt is that it makes you thirsty. When you eat salt, if you eat some salty chips, next thing you know, you're looking for a can of Coke or something. Well, you should be looking for a nice bottle of pump water. But anyway, we know the flavours, don't we? So salt makes you thirsty, and our job as God's people is to make people thirsty for Jesus. When they taste our lives, see, being salt means living and conducting ourselves in such a way that people want what we have, that they want our joy, that they want our enthusiasm, our sense of purpose, our faith and our confidence in God. My question to you is, how much of that do you have? How much of that are you living in? I loved Nathaniel's communion message this morning to remind us of all that Jesus has done, and that we need to live in that on a daily basis, drawing that joy, drawing that strength and that confidence. See, once upon a time, I thought that my evangelistic duty as a Christian was to strike up conversations with non-Christian people and then very, very craftily steer that conversation around to spiritual things. For those that have been Christians for a while, do you remember those days? We were encouraged to kind of do that. Am I the only one? Wow. Okay, I'm sure there's a few more of you. And we used to have little formulas for how to start conversations and then bring Jesus into it. And perhaps that worked for a time. Perhaps it was okay, but for me, after a few bad experiences, eventually I didn't even want to engage with non-Christian people anymore. It was just kind of like, oh man, this just feels so contrived. It feels so plastic. And where's it coming from anyway? I kind of felt like it was my duty. And in fact, I'm almost ashamed to say this, but I'll say it anyway because, it'll make you feel better. And that is that I remember a time way back when I was going through a tough time, I guess, and I dreaded even going out in public, because I felt like it was my duty to share about Jesus, but the whole thing just felt so unauthentic. It just felt crazy, right? I mean, that's just bizarre. I mean, you probably never had that experience, but for me, it was just like, oh man. And I started to think to myself, this is not right. I mean, when did the good news become bad news? When did the good news of the gospel ever become bad news? Why should I be feeling this way? And it really caused me to reflect and do a lot of heart searching. See, because all praise to Jesus, that whole process led me to discover that rather than trying to talk to people about Jesus, I could just be Jesus to them. I could just begin to be like him. And that kind of did the trick. That opened up a whole lot more doors. That actually got things a whole lot more authentic. You see, Jesus never had any problem attracting unsaved or non-Christian or non-church or non-religious people to himself. Just no trouble. They loved being with him. They were drawn to him. In fact, it was the religious ones that had the most trouble with him. The ones that you would think would recognize the Messiah and go, wow, we've got to hang out with this guy. They were the ones that wanted to throw rocks at him. It was the down and outers. It was the people that wouldn't darken the door of a synagogue, which was the equivalent, you could say, of the church back in the day. They were the ones that wanted to hang out with Jesus. What's going on here? What did Jesus know that we don't? I think we should listen to him if he knows something we don't. So let's have a look at this passage in Luke chapter 15 for an example. In verses 1 to 3 of Luke chapter 15, listen to this. By this time, a lot of men and women of doubtful reputation were hanging around Jesus. Don't you love that? Listening intently. The Pharisees and religious scholars were not pleased, not at all pleased. They growled, he takes in sinners and eats meals with them, treating them like old friends. Wow, I think to myself, what a stamp of authenticity on Jesus that they just stated right there. But did you see that? People of doubtful reputation were hanging out with Jesus. I wonder how many of us have heard maybe a workmate or a family member that doesn't live for God, or is not a religious or Christian person. Maybe we've heard them say something like this: if I were to ever go to church, it would probably fall down. Anybody heard someone say that? Yeah. What are they saying? What they're saying is that because of my doubtful reputation, I don't think I would be welcome in church. That's what they're saying. It'll probably fall down. Their doubtful reputation. But not with Jesus. He welcomed them. He welcomed people of doubtful reputation. And notice what it says next. They listened to him intently. They were listening to him. He wasn't trying to steer a conversation around to spiritual matters. He wasn't trying to take it all nice and slowly and try and manipulate things. No. It was because he was talking about spiritual matters that they were there. They were hanging on his every word, listening intently to him. He was just being himself, and people were listening intently to what he had to say. These people with doubtful reputations were hungry for the truth that he had to give. Friends, I want to uncover that principle again, because I reckon there's people all over our city who are hungry for truth. They're waiting to encounter the real living Jesus in your life. They're waiting to encounter someone who believes, someone who will treat them like old friends, someone who actually believes that the gospel is good news and are living it, are living the gospel, the good news. As I said before, when did the good news become bad news? Since when did the good news that you and I can know God and receive assurance and eternal life become something to be despised? It actually didn't. In fact, I was watching a movie the other week, and In fact, while we were away last week, actually up in Papamoa, and there was a line on this movie, and I thought, this is amazing. It was about this new sort of technology, and this particular scientist, he said, do you know this news, this technology is probably the greatest thing to touch this planet since Jesus walked the shores of Galilee. It's not a Christian movie, and I'm thinking, the people out there still think that was good news, that Jesus walked the shores of Galilee. See, because a lot of people around today, people want to despise the Christian message and stuff, and make light of it, and make like it didn't even happen and that it was not important and so on. What's really going on here? Friends, can I suggest this? It's not the message that's at issue, but it's the messengers. It's not the message. The message is still good news. The message is the best news ever. That you and I could be forgiven of our sin, have an assurance of eternal life, reconnected with God the Father. This is incredible. It's the best news ever. Friends, it's not the message, it's the messenger. You see, the most delicious beef patty, and I'm sorry if you're a vegetarian, but you just got to kind of feel it, all right? Or maybe you can think of a vegetable patty. That doesn't do it for me, but a beef patty, all right? The most delicious beef patty, beautifully flame grilled, dripping with fat, because that's the tasty bit. Just enough salt. The most delicious beef patty, friends, it'll be avoided if it's sandwiched between two moldy bread buns, a piece of blue vein cheese. It's not blue vein cheese, it's just gone blue vein, just moldy and crusty and been left in the fridge without a wrapper on it, so it looks like a piece of plastic, piece of wax, and then a piece of wilted brown lettuce. Who's going to eat that patty? It's the same patty. Exactly, the patty was flame grilled, beautiful. But sandwich like that, it's shocking. You see, the package is just as important as the product. Friend, you're the package. You're the package of this thing called the gospel. Woo. Hey, be challenged, but be inspired. Because we don't have to be moldy bread buns. We can choose. We can choose to be fresh. We can choose to be joyful. We can choose to be like that guy at Z. And I don't know if he's a Christian. Maybe he's a Christian. Maybe he's working out his salt thing at the service station. Certainly worked on me. We don't have to be crusty and old and moldy. We can choose. You see, I've discovered this. I've discovered that when you just be yourself, you're happy, Jesus-filled, excited about life, God, and church self, people love it. They just do. They love it. Because so many people around there are not like out there are not like that. They're kind of in their own little world. They've got the weight of the world on their shoulders and they're worried about this and that and everything's negative. Now, I'm not saying that you and I just need to somehow just not be negative anymore and just be positive all the time. No. It's out of a relationship with Jesus. We realize that there's a higher truth to the realities that we're facing day by day. That there's a purpose in this. There's going somewhere. There's victory to be had, even if we're pushing through the storm, like the sort of songs we're singing this morning. And that brings a joy into your life. And then you start to live that out. And I'll tell you what, people find that attractive. They really, really do. In fact, they're open to hear about the message when the messenger has embraced the life and the truth of it. That's what I've discovered.
I'm Stephen, and I've been coming along to SALT for 8 or 9 years now, and I'm the senior administrator in the office, which is really exciting. I love that. I met my wife, Ash, at SALT on my first day and saw her and thought, this is a pretty cool church, I might stay. And just earlier this year in April, on the way home from Life Conference, me and Ash were on the plane. We had different seats, we were in different rows because we booked our tickets at different times. So I was kind of thinking, I wonder if I'm going to be sitting next to someone that I don't know, and I wonder what the conversation's going to kind of turn out like, and that kind of thing. And this guy sat next to me, and I just, he had his headphones with him and his book and things, and I was thinking, okay, yeah, maybe he wants to just, have his own kind of quiet time and stuff. But I thought I'll just introduce myself, say hi, and just kind of start some conversation. And if he wants to just have his own quiet time, he can. So I just introduced myself, and he asked what I do. So I said I work at a church, and he's like, oh, that's cool. I was quite interested in that, and he told me that he's doing study and stuff. So and then we just literally spent the rest of the flight chatting about our lives, about what we do, our hobbies, our families and stuff. And he told me that he does skateboarding, and showed me a video of him skating. And I said, oh, cool, I talked a bit about motorbikes and showed him a picture of my motorbike. So we were just exchanging, a bit of our life story and stuff. And then as we were kind of coming into Pami over the airport, I just said, oh, it's been awesome chatting to you, man, and just getting to know you a bit. And then he said, this was my favorite flight ever. And I was like, oh man, that's awesome. And I said, is that right? I said, well, in that case, it's been mine too. And I thought, wow, that must have been really impacting for him then to say that it's his favorite flight ever. And he was like, oh, hey man, could I get your number from you to text you later and just to kind of catch up and flick you some questions if I have them and stuff. And I was like, yeah, sure, man. So I gave him my number and my name and things. And then, he was pretty much like, I've been just wondering about the Bible and going to church and things, but didn't really know where to start. And he said that he's got a mate who's a Christian, and he's been asking him a few questions here and there and that kind of thing. And it was really cool just to kind of realize it's just sharing a story with someone, and it's actually fun, and I really enjoyed just chatting with him, and didn't need to push the gospel on him or anything. Just chatted with him and just took a genuine interest in his life and in his hobbies and things, and came away feeling like, man, if this is what sharing your faith is like, then it's amazing and it's exciting and it's awesome, and I want to do it again.
I've had the most amazing conversations on aeroplanes with complete strangers over the years. So just a couple of very brief ones. I remember traveling to Auckland and sitting down with this lady and just beside her, and we just got chatting about what we were going to be doing and why we were going to Auckland. And over the course of the trip, just like Steve's story, we just began to talk about life, and she wanted to know a bit about what I do. And that can go one of two ways when you tell them you're a pastor. Something that can be like a lead balloon, or they might be courteous and go, oh, that's nice, But by the end of the flight, I had shared with her our church vision. I'd shared with her all about our mission work overseas and what we're all about as a church. I'd shared with her our 6 stages of discipleship that we teach here at SALT. I walked her through all those stages, and she just thought, man, this is amazing. This is incredible. I love this. It's good news. It's still good news. I remember our first trip to India. We stopped in at Melbourne, and I think we might have changed flights. I can't quite remember, but anyway, we had more people on the plane, and I was sitting beside this Australian guy that was flying to Albania and via Delhi, and so we were going to be on the plane for 7 hours. I thought, well, this will be interesting. See how this this conversation goes. We just got chatting about what we did, and he wanted to know what I was doing. So I said, I'm here with a team. We're going into India and visiting shelter homes and all this sort of stuff, and he was interested in that. Then he started telling me about his 2 aunties. One of them was a Mormon, the other was a Jehovah's Witness, and he said, they're always trying to convert me, and I'm sick of it. And I'm thinking, oh, thank you, God. Thank you for delivering me from the old methods of trying to steer the conversation, Anyway, so then after a while, he said to me, so what is it that you believe, if you don't mind me asking? I don't mind you asking at all. I'm glad you asked. So I just presented the gospel to him, but I did it like this. I didn't sort of dump it in his lap, like, okay, so you got to believe this, and this is all mankind are going to hell, and and you need to get saved, and Have you committed any sins? Well, man, I'll tell you what, you committed sins, you need Jesus. I didn't do it like that, just as well. Instead, what I did is 2 of us are sitting here, and I presented it over here so we could both look at it. I said, well, this is what Christianity teaches. So I just began to explain about sin and about separation from God, and I explained about the cross. I explained about how Jesus died on the cross and rose again, and through confession of faith in Christ it reconnects us with the Father. So I presented it out here so we could both look at it rather than dumping it on his lap. You know, he said to me at the end of that, he said, wow. He said, nobody has ever told me that. Nobody has ever shared that with me. And I thought to myself, God, right there, some seeds got sown into his heart. He was receptive to them. And will I ever meet him again? Maybe not, except maybe in eternity one day, when those seeds begin to germinate and the Holy Spirit leads them to another salty Christian who's able to put some water on those seeds. Just like I think Steve was just the water from seeds that were being sown, and that guy that we just heard about, his workmate, he said he had a mate that was a Christian. You know, so this is how the Lord uses us as salt. Now, all of this for me, it came about as I made a decision to just relax and enjoy repping Jesus. Just enjoy being Jesus. You might say, but how will I know what to say? How will I know what to say when someone asks me the question? Look, here's my answer to you. Just don't worry about that. Just relax and learn from Jesus' example. Get back into the scriptures, get back into the Gospels, and read about how Jesus did it. And so just for the remainder of this message, for the next few minutes, I just want to take us through some points from Jesus' life that can give us some clues as to how to be salt. All right, the first thing was he was caring. He actually cared about people. There's a good place to start. You and I can just start to care about people. Jesus was willing to take time with them and make room for them, as Sarah shared last week. I'm reminded of a story where a guy by the name of Jairus came to Jesus and he said, would you come to my place and heal my daughter? She's desperately ill. And Jesus said, sure, let's go. So the whole crowd just had to go with Jesus to Jairus' place. But in the meantime, a woman with a blood flow reached out and touched Jesus' robe, and power from the Lord went and healed her. And Jesus turned around and he had to connect with her. In the midst of crowds, he was interested in individuals. Friends, that's the epitome of caring. Being aware. I mean, we can have a general sort of, I care about humanity, but do you care about that person? Do you care about that person the Lord's brought into your life enough to pause and create a margin and make room? The second thing I see about Jesus is he was friendly. Wow, what a radical concept right there. Whoever thought about being friendly in 2019? What a radical idea. See, I think one of the most Christ-like things that we can do is just to be friendly. Whenever I'm in Auckland, like at a conference or something like that, because Auckland is just kind of like one of these funny places. You walk down the street and everyone's got their little earbuds in and they're all just minding their own business and they don't make eye contact. And I just can't help myself. I've just got to look people in the eye and say, hi, how are you? You know, and this sort of thing. Oh, they jolt to attention, but they quite like it. You can see a bit of a smile on their face when that happens. And there's something about friendliness that changes things, and it gets those endorphins going too. How many could do with just a few more of those flowing? You know, the good feelings, the happy feelings. You show some friendliness to someone, it gets them flowing in you and in them. This is good for you. This is good for your mental health. Here's the third thing. Jesus was accepting of all people. He was just accepting of people no matter where they were from, no matter what background they were from. And one example that comes to mind is when Jesus stopped at a well on the way through the country of Samaria. He stopped at a well and the disciples went into town to buy lunch, and there was a woman at the well. Now right there you got a cultural problem, because she was a Samaritan and she was a woman. Jews have nothing to do with Samaritans. Jewish men have nothing to do with women outside of their own familial relationships. And so Jesus steps right over those cultural norms and starts to just have a chat about water, just have a chat about, food. And next thing you know, this woman, she's like, you, a Jewish man talking to me, a Samaritan woman? What is this? And it baited her interest. And next thing you know, he's sharing with her about the love of God and just how awesome is that. So he was so accepting. He was the master of breaking cultural norms. And I wonder if some of us need to step out of our comfort zone a little, and just step out there and just begin to connect with people who aren't necessarily like us. Thirdly, he was interested in people. Another story that comes to mind is Jesus is coming into the city of Jericho, and there's this little guy sitting up in a tree who's trying to see Jesus, but he's trying to hide from the crowd because he's an outcast, And then Jesus comes along and he looks up in the tree. I don't know how he knew his name. Maybe he heard people around him go, oh, look at Zacchaeus up the tree. Oh, Zacchaeus. Oh, good. Note to self, his name's Zacchaeus. When I get to the tree, hey, Zacchaeus, you talking to me? Yeah, I'm talking to you. I want to come to your place for dinner. What? You want to come to my place? Jesus should have gone to the mayor's place for dinner. But no, he goes to the outcast place. He was interested in people, interested enough to catch a person's name, interested enough to invite himself to lunch. Now, that might not fit in today's society. Just don't go around inviting yourself to people's places for lunch. But what would be the equivalent is make an appointment to go out for lunch at a cafe and maybe offer to pay. Interest in people, and take the time to really just, how are you? One of the things I loved about Steve's story is he just really was interested in this guy, and this guy reciprocated that with interest in him. Jesus did that. It was amazing. The next thing I see about Jesus is he was interesting. He was an interesting person. How do we know this? Well, Jesus had a wide list of topics that he could engage with people on. From fishing to farming, baking to sewing. He knew a lot about a lot. Or no, maybe he knew a little about a lot. You can't know everything about everything, but you can know a little about a lot of things. And Jesus certainly did this, and he used these as opportunities and illustrations to teach and to engage people. He was able to engage people in the things that they were familiar with. Now, I think what a cool thing to nurture hobbies. Apart from the fact that it's good for you to have just a bit of time doing something for personal leisure, not to live for it, but to certainly have a room in your life to nurture hobbies. The other thing it does is it makes your life interesting. It actually gives you something to engage with people on. I mean, the reality is the average person in first conversation is probably not going to be interested in my great downloads from the Holy Spirit that I get in my prayer time. But they will talk to me about my dirt bike that I ride. They will talk to me about my backyard engineering. How many people saw my Darth Vader brazier on Facebook? It's gone mental. I'll tell you what, so many people, this is just a little aside, so many people want one of those things. I can't keep up. So there's a bit of a potential little business starting here. But anyway, it's for missions fundraising, all right? It's to get this poultry farm up and running. Can I encourage you, be thinking about what you can commit to that poultry farm offering. Let's get this thing built. Anyway, be interesting. Be interesting. Have something you can engage with people on. And what a great thing. Jesus certainly did that. The next one is Jesus had a sense of humor. Jesus was a funny guy. He was. You say, well, how do you know that? I thought he was pretty serious. All the pictures I see in the stained glass windows make him look very serious. Thank you very much. Well, have a think about the story of where Jesus said, hey, if any of you have got if any of you think you're here to correct other people, you try to remove the speck of wood the speck of sawdust out of someone's eye, and you've got a beam of timber in yours. I mean, that's hilarious. Have you ever thought about that? Someone getting around with a 4x2 sticking out of their eye? Jesus had a sense of humor. He was able to take simple things and embellish them and make them funny and make them applicable and connect with people. And I just think it's a great thing to nurture a sense of humor. You've got your own sense of humor. I've got mine. And I love encountering other people's sense of humor. It's great. If we want people to be attracted to us, we've got to see the funny side of life, don't we? And the joy that you have in Jesus enables you to do that, because you don't have to get around worried about, but what if, because you know that the Lord's got it in hand. So you can alleviate yourself of that stress and create a bit of room for humor. Are you with me this morning, church? Are you getting this morning? Nurture these things. And then finally, the last one. Jesus was a bit mysterious at times. I want you to think about this. He was mysterious. In other words, he didn't give too much away. Instead, he let people get curious about him. We were taught back in the day, whenever you start a new job or something, the first opportunity you've got, just let your colours fly. Tell them all about your Christian life and everything, and just be out there. Do you know, I thought that was wisdom in the day, but I've come to realise that's actually a bit of a dumb thing. The moment you give your position away, the enemy knows where you are. If you think in terms of battle, in terms of combat, the first side to start firing their gun is the first one that gives their position away. Now the enemy all know where they are and can zero their weapons in on them. And I think that when we give too much away in those early stages, before we've built up a bit of relational credit with people, then they decide whether or not they're going to shut us out of their lives. Oh, he's a religious nutter. And nothing we say after that is kind of acceptable. So I think, take a note from Jesus' book, take a leaf from Jesus' book, and just don't give too much away. Just leave enough for people to become intrigued. That's what Jesus did. He just let people become intrigued with him, and he drip fed it. Keep them wanting more. That's a good comedian knows that the best way to leave a show is keep them wanting more. Keep them wanting an encore, and don't give it to them till the next show. They'll come back. So there's just a few keys and principles from Jesus' life. But in conclusion this morning, why is our church named Salt? Why are we named Salt? It's to remind us that we are called to be the salt of the earth. We're called to bring out the God flavors in all our interactions with people. We're called to bring the life to the party. And this is not about a personality. You would say, I'm a quiet personality. It's got nothing to do with personality. It's got everything to do with attitude. Got everything to do with internal world. We're called to be people who shine Jesus to the world. And friends, we will make a huge difference when we do this. We will make a huge difference in our workplaces, in our community, on the school board. Just be like Jesus.